Welcome back to Conservative Direct, where we call it like it is, because someone has to. Let me ask you a question. How many times did a top-tier US politician collapse, freeze, or slur through a sentence this year? Biden tripped over sandbags. McConnell literally froze mid-sentence in front of cameras. Pelosi was propped up like a wax figure at a press conference. It's like Capitol Hill has turned into a live-action game of Weekend at Bernie's. And you've got to wonder, why aren't these people retiring? Why aren't they on a beach somewhere visiting their grandkids, enjoying early bird specials and bingo night like normal retirees? Why are they still clinging to power like Gollum clutching the One Ring? Because what we're really seeing isn't just a bunch of aging politicians, it's a full-blown gerontocracy. Yeah, there's a word for it. A system of government run by the elderly. And before you say so what, let's look at the numbers. Right now, the average age of a US senator is over 64. Back in the 1980s, it was closer to 50. And the share of senators over the age of 70 has doubled in the last 2 decades. We have more lawmakers collecting Social Security than ever before. And let's not even get started on presidents. The 3 oldest presidents ever elected: Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and Donald Trump again. The man is both first and third on the leaderboard. Behind them, Ronald Reagan, who was accused of cognitive decline throughout his second term, and William Henry Harrison, whose claim to fame was dying almost immediately after being sworn in. Now let's put that in perspective, because while age often brings wisdom, and we're not knocking life experience, let's not forget that America was founded by energetic young men. George Washington led the Revolutionary Army in his early 40s. Alexander Hamilton was writing the Federalist Papers before he turned 35. Thomas Jefferson drafted the Declaration of Independence at age 33. James Madison was 36 when the Constitution was written. These men weren't slowly wheeling themselves into Congress sessions. They were full of vigor, vision, and yes, real intellectual horsepower. Compare that to today's leadership. Are you telling me we're in better hands now than we were then? That our current crop of professional lifers with 30-year Senate terms and teleprompter scripts are somehow superior to the founders of the greatest nation on earth? Let's talk about why this is happening. On the surface, it sounds like good news. People are living longer. Medical science is keeping folks healthier into their 70s and 80s. 50 is the new 40, right? But here's the thing. Living longer isn't the same as leading better. What we're really dealing with is a system that rewards entrenchment, not innovation. In Congress, power comes from seniority. The longer you stay, the more influence you get. Committee chairmanships, leadership roles, pork barrel favors, all of it is handed out based on how long you've managed to survive. Not how well you govern, not what you've accomplished, just how long you've been breathing in Beltway air. So what incentive do they have to leave? None. In fact, grooming younger leaders is seen as a threat, not a duty. Ask yourself, when was the last time any of these career politicians actually mentored a next-generation leader? Trained a successor? They don't. They see new talent as a challenge to their throne. And the result? A ruling class of septuagenarians who'd rather die in office than pass the torch. And that power hoarding has consequences. Take tech policy. These people are making decisions about AI, cryptocurrency, digital surveillance, quantum computing, things that require a basic understanding of how a computer works. Watch a tech hearing in Congress and try not to cringe. Can ChatGPT turn off my refrigerator? Is my toaster stealing my data? It's like watching a bad improv skit where no one knows what they're talking about, but they all have microphones and government authority. But it gets worse. Because when there's a generational clash, and there always is, the younger generation loses. COVID lockdowns, schools were shut down, kids were masked and isolated, while Congress ensured seniors got priority for vaccines and relief programs. Young people lost years of education, career development, and mental health. Also, the political class could pat itself on the back for following the science. Or look at Social Security. Everyone knows it's unsustainable, but no one will touch it. Even if the changes only impact younger generations. Why? Because the people making the laws are also collecting the checks. They're not interested in reform, they're interested in re-election or housing costs. Young people can't buy homes, can't start families, can't build wealth. But Congress? Too busy protecting their real estate portfolios and zoning loopholes to care. Again, the system is tilted toward the already retired, not the next generation. And while we're at it, how many of our most senior officials are even governing at all? Let's examine the ultimate case in point. President Joe Biden. How much leading did he actually do as our president? Or is he just showing up for photo ops between naps and letting his staff run the country? Biden spent more time on vacation than any president in recent memory. The man practically lived on the beach. And when he wasn't there, he was reading from cue cards, waving to invisible people, or getting ushered off stage like your great uncle at Thanksgiving dinner. So, who's really in charge? His wife, his aides, some unelected advisor we didn't vote for, the autopen that signs his documents for him? When you elect a president who's clearly past his prime, and the power vacuum gets filled by nameless bureaucrats, you don't just have a leadership problem, you have a crisis of democracy. We get it. No one wants to admit that they are old. No one wants to contemplate that they are in decline. And here's the kicker. The very people who should be thinking about America's long-term future are the ones least likely to be thinking beyond their own lifespan and their own interests. And yet these are the people making the decisions that will define the next 50 years. Doesn't that seem a little backward? So let's talk about how to fix it. First up, term limits. The idea is simple. You serve a few terms, you go home. You live under the laws you passed. It brings in new voices, new ideas, and breaks the cycle of career politicians. But, is there a downside? Maybe. Some argue that term limits just make the problem worse, because the real power shifts to unelected bureaucrats and swamp creatures who don't have term limits. You get a revolving door of inexperienced lawmakers, and a permanent class of behind-the-scenes manipulators who pull the strings no matter who's in office. Second solution, age limits. If there's a minimum age to run for president, why not a maximum age to stay in office? But again, where do you draw the line? Not all 75-year-olds are created equal. Some are sharp as a tack. Others shouldn't be driving, let alone making policy. So if we set an age cap, are we discriminating against competence just because it comes with gray hair? And third, mandatory cognitive tests. On paper, this sounds like a no-brainer. But in today's hyper-polarized environment, who gets to design the test? Who administers it? And what happens when one party says the results are biased, unfair, or fake news? Are we opening another front in the culture war, or creating a tool that could be abused by whichever side is in power? These are tough questions, but they're questions we need to start asking. Because pretending that 90-year-olds are just as capable of governing as 50-year-olds isn't wise. It's dangerous. So what do you think? Are our graying leaders a harmless relic of a bygone era, or a serious problem we need to fix? Is America a gerontocracy now? And if so, what comes next? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Should we push for term limits, age limits, mandatory tests? Or do we just keep crossing our fingers and hoping the next guy can remember what day it is? Let us know what you think. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. This is Conservative Direct, where we call out the crazy and fight for common sense in an increasingly senseless world. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.